we're here. This is episode 1 of the Culture Change podcast, and we're going to use this as a introductory episode to say, who we are, what our thoughts are, and kind of the direction we want to go. My name is Richard Winn. This is Pastor Johnathan Armstrong.
Johnathan Armstrong. I don't like pastor, but I'll take it. Yeah, so I am a pastor, but I don't like that as my initial. But since RJ Richard called me that, then I'm Pastor Johnathan forever now.
Yeah, so first hot take. Pastor doesn't like pastors.
Yes.
We'll run with that.
No, I like pastors. Never mind. We'll get there later.
So, pastor, worship leader, father.
Yes.
Any other titles you'd like to claim?
Oh, my. Husband.
That's a very good one to throw in there with father. Pastor,
yes.
Husband, father, in that order.
Yeah. Husband, I am, that's like the top one for me. And then father falls like right under that. And sometimes that's hard because my daughter's so cute that we want to try to put her up top. And we're like, priorities. But yeah, so what about you, man? I know you're a man of many talents and abilities.
I would not say that at all.
He is. No, he is. So anything that you put your hands on, you succeed at. So tell us, man, like kind of who you are and what you do.
Gosh, I don't even know how I would define myself. I mean, I'm a business owner. You could say that could be successful.
Definitely. If I tried that, it would be a crash and burn. So you're doing good.
I'll throw husband out there as well. We'll throw that one on top. Husband to his sister.
It's my sister. Yeah.
To his sister. Father, son-in-law, son. Haven't worked in many businesses, so I can't say too much of stuff as having been successful. I would call myself, as you're a pastor, I would call myself more along the lines of a student. Like we talked about, coming from a little bit of different viewpoints, with you coming from, I guess we'd say like the kind of the pastor of the general church kind of body, me coming from a studying through and being a student of the Hebrew and following through kind of a little bit of a different direction. Mm-hmm. I know we said our general principles are basically the same, but just a little bit different practice, a little bit different perspective.
Absolutely.
So this not being a podcast that is centered on religion or on specifically the Bible. The Bible's obviously going to become a part of it.
Sure.
We'll have standing points and topics in it, but wanting to be more about the culture because, in my viewpoint at least, our application and relationship isn't a religious practice as it is a lifestyle.
Absolutely. I think that's where a lot of people can get things confused when they think it's like, oh, this is a religious practice. Then it becomes bondage instead of a free life that we're able to live as a, like you were saying, a lifestyle. And there's freedom in that,
Most definitely. And I have a couple, let's say we're get to know you questions, maybe try and get you a little uncomfortable as we're talking and see what happens. So we'll start off with a really easy one. Maybe not so easy.
We'll see.
What are the characteristics that you see of being a biblical father?
Yes. Man, we're jumping in hot and heavy. I thought it was going to be like, what's your favorite color? But this is good. Okay, Kate, repeat the
question. Doesn't even have to, so it doesn't even necessarily have to be your, defined out, this is everything with it, but just like a good base overview of what your thoughts are to being a biblical father. I know we both will have a little bit different perspectives on this. The fact that I have 2 sons, you have a daughter.
Yeah.
So our thoughts as far as the application of fatherhood will be different because, I don't know how to father a daughter because I don't have one.
No, for sure. I think where my brain first goes to is when you look at, God the Father, he's always there. It doesn't matter how hard you run, far you run, and God's always there, right? And that's what it means to be a biblical father. For me, to my daughter, Ivy June, is being present is so important. Mm-hmm. I can get so busy with life to provide and all these things that I forget the fact that I just need to be present. Is so valuable to her. Obviously, so is providing. Don't get me wrong. That's part of it as well.
Living on the streets, but at least you're there.
We're living on the streets together. No, but knowing that being present is one of the most important things in our household for me and Savannah for our daughter. Yeah.
Yeah, I can definitely say I can, agree to that. One of the benefits of being a small business owner is the fact that my wife gets to stay home, be with the kids. I think that's probably the most important factor to me. And then being able to make my own schedule where I'm able to be there for the important stuff instead of having to request to a boss and having somebody say, "Ha ha, we're not going to give you off." It's like, yeah, I'm off.
Yeah, exactly.
Obviously, work being very important and being like, hey, there's going to be some stuff that has to flow around, It gets to holidays where other people are going to be wanting to spend extra time with their family, and I spend extra time working.
Yeah.
And it's just how it goes sometimes.
Absolutely. And, I think, because I've been in the secular realm of working and then the church realm of working. And when it comes to the holiday seasons as well, like the holidays are busy for church. People are like, oh, you guys get time off. And it's like, actually, we're doing everything. Even this week, it's crazy right now. So, but it's good.
I remember, like, you'd think with that sort of stuff and working at Walmart for a little while, and it's like Black Friday is the worst holiday in the world. Everybody's like, oh, Easter, Christmas is like the biggest thing in the corporate world is Black Friday.
My goodness. You're probably removing more TVs than getting your workout in the warehouse.
I don't want to claim having touched any TVs on a Black Friday. I didn't touch one TV.
Yeah, that's great.
So jumping in, so we defined, you don't like the title of pastor.
Yeah.
But with that, because you've been in a couple different titles of pastor, having been a worship pastor, a youth pastor, associate pastor. With that, what are some of the difficulties that you've come across with being a pastor? Like just the general difficulties of being a pastor.
Man, that could be a really deep question that I could talk on for days. And it's funny too, because I'll remember certain things that was like a struggle in certain seasons that I'll forget about. But to get into that, I think one of the biggest struggles is as pastors caring for a person and pastoring and discipling people, pouring your heart and your life into them, and then seeing them turn away. And I'm not saying that like, oh, because they turned away from Christ, but like, back to drugs or back to the mess that they came from is really hard because you want to see the best for them, and you want to see them like as you see their potential. That's a pastor's heart, is you see the potential of a person even if they can't. Yeah. And to see someone walk away and not recognize who they are and why they are, and that's hard. Yeah, that's one of the biggest struggles that I've walked through. So
I was going to say my next follow-up question with that, so we'll put it kind of on the flip side.
Okay.
Because my follow-up question was going to be like the feelings and emotions that go behind watching people come and go. So you've mentioned it as far as people per se falling away. What about people coming through and just like, walking in the door and moving on, not necessarily in a bad context, but, from a secular point of view, people are hired and fired, but there's not as much always as a relationship that's gained between in the secular world as there is whenever you're in the church environment.
Yeah.
So with the continual funnel of people coming in and leaving, but whenever a relationship is actually made, and like how that affects you personally, and then how you see it like progressing.
Yeah, I see that different than a lot of pastors, because obviously like most senior pastors, maybe that's why I'm not a senior pastor, I don't know if I ever will be, of churches, they want to see people get planted and rooted and established, obviously. That's good, and I'm not saying anything against that. But I think I see it a little bit different, that it's a kingdom thing, not just a church thing. So people are going to be coming and going for the rest of our life. And I kind of adopted the idea that it's not about just my church.
Yeah.
It's not about just my town, right? Jesus isn't a resident of Canyon Lake, even though I think he is, but he's a resident of the world. You know what I mean? It's not just about this little thing here. And people coming and going, seasons are, some are short, some are long. And I'm learning to embrace the fact that God will make spiritual heart connections. And that's awesome. And it's a bigger picture thing,
Yeah, I see the picture of kind of like the oak tree sitting there, and you have this like gust of wind that blows through, and it grabs the seed that's going down, and it carries it off somewhere else. And
Yeah, exactly.
even though it was once a part of that tree, oak tree not having seeds that will get carried in the wind is probably a really bad example.
Some strong wind for
Some
oaks.
really strong wind to carry those acorns. But it kind of getting carried away on its own journey.
Yeah. Absolutely.
And being able to see it and being able to have that vision to let go, I think is really cool. I think it maybe will help you one day be able to grow to be a senior pastor because you understand that some seeds will fall as they may and grow close to home, and others will be carried away. And in that generality, as far as the world goes, more trees somewhere else is a good thing because roots can't intertwine amongst each other to truly grow and blossom like they can if there's a little bit of distance.
That's good. I guess I have a question for you. You've been on the other side of where I'm at exactly. You've been a person that you've come through certain ministries and certain part of. I mean, if you know it or not, RJ, Richard here, he's been in and through and ministries of all kinds of. You've been trained from multiple pastors and people, and now rabbi. So there's a lot going on for you. Now, you being one of the people that have come and gone through some ministries, what's that like for you?
So for me, I'd say it's kind of, in that regard, not being like an open door of like, hey, I'm at this church and I don't like it anymore, so I'm leaving. Kind of along the lines of how it's been, it's like the ebbs and flow and moving with God. And I definitely see, being under different pastors for different seasons and seeing different perspectives. I like seeing the human side of a leader.
Yeah.
Because everybody always puts these leaders up on a pedestal and they don't realize that they're humans too.
Absolutely.
And when you get like in close, you see the fact that somebody's a human. They can maybe make mistakes, but you see how they respond to mistakes.
That's good.
You see how they react to a problem or even to something that would be per se offensive.
Yeah.
And it goes, hey, that person who is a leader, one, they have emotions. They have raw emotions. You see the fact that something could bother them, but then you see that there is a good response. And having been sitting under, from small churches to bigger churches to tiny gatherings, and still being able to, get feedback and see the importance in all of them. Yeah. In say a medium-sized church, there's a lot of community.
Absolutely.
In a bigger church, you see a lot as far as more of the business side of things, which so many people are like, oh, the church shouldn't be a business. Is like, if the church doesn't have money, nothing can happen.
Yeah, that's true.
So seeing like the business side of things and important decisions being made and knowing that, hey, this one decision affects a lot of people.
That's true. Yeah.
And then seeing the importance of a small gathering, gathering of say 10 to 15 people and being able to see how there can be a deeper level of relationship.
Absolutely.
And it becomes, instead of it being almost like friends, it becomes like family. And there's a lot more that you can gain from the mentorship on that side.
That's good.
So like being under a pastor of a large church, interning under a large church, you don't necessarily see the person you're under as much because they've got a lot of stuff they're doing.
Yeah.
Whereas with a smaller group, you can really get underneath somebody and see how things go. In that regard, it becomes really, really eye-opening to see, a lot of different aspects of the world and to hopefully have retained a lot of good qualities from all those different areas.
Yeah. Now, that's a good point, man. Because you have, I guess I didn't think of it like that. You've been from a large, medium, in small gatherings. And one of my favorite things is I've never really been part of what you would call a small gathering until recently. We opened up our home and did small group at our house. And there's something more intimate about it, like family. And I'm getting to see that side of community, this year. And it's cool to be able to pull from all three of those. And there's value in all of it,
I think, too, especially whenever you get into a smaller group of people, you can go a lot deeper. So like saying being under rabbi and being in a small gathering underneath rabbi, there is some stuff that, if he were to stand up in front of a group of 100 people and teach it, one, it would probably offend half of them.
Yeah.
The other, half of the rest of them would go over their head.
Yeah.
Some of them wouldn't see any context, and then you have the group that grasps it.
Yeah.
And being in a smaller group, it can be going into the detail and asking more questions, where it becomes so eye-opening on another level. That I think is such an important thing that more people need in their lives.
Absolutely. That's good, man.
Well, I think my last question, as far as kind of, introduction and getting to know you.
Yeah.
Here comes the hard one.
Uh-oh. Okay.
Is growing up as a pastor's kid.
Yes.
Not only are you a pastor, you grew up under a pastor.
Yes.
Hopefully this isn't the reason why you don't like the concept of being one.
No.
Your dad is an amazing man.
Yes, he is.
So growing up under a pastor and now being one, I would assume that has a great deal and impacts how your decision making.
Yeah.
But then what's your feelings of growing up in a pastor's home, seeing the time that was involved, like the things that you maybe were lacking or would change maybe, and the effect that it's had on you to become who you are today?
Yeah, man, these are solid questions, man. Yeah, so let's just get this out in the open. I never wanted to be a pastor, okay? Growing up, I wanted to be like my dad, don't get me wrong, because my dad's a great man. I saw how he loved my mom and loved us kids. I never saw him yell at my mom. I could respect that and honor that. I never saw him like he was just an honorable man. But I never wanted to be a pastor because I saw, first of all, the weight that pastors carry that a lot of people don't. Someone the other day, they said, man, all you pastors do is sit around and talk about the Bible. And I'm like, if that's actually what you think, you've obviously never.
They'd be surprised how much pastors don't get to just talk about the Bible.
No. Most of my day today has been cleaning and decorating for Christmas, which is awesome. But at the same time, there wasn't much Bible involved in that. So, I never wanted to grow up doing that because I saw the weight that my dad carried and my mom carried, because it's not just, the pastor, but the pastor's spouse as well that carries the weight of it, because it's a life commitment, right? And I never wanted that weight to carry. And when I ended up truly giving my life to the Lord, I felt a passion for people. And I say this all the time to my team and to the church here. The call to ministry is not the call to a platform. God can use a platform, don't get me wrong, but it's the call to a group of people. And I truly feel that hey, I feel called to ministry, and I felt that because I felt called to people, to broken people, to lost people. And I forget where the question was going, RJ.
It's just growing up as a pastor's kid and how it's impacted who you are today.
Absolutely. Yeah, and I got to see a lot of things, and I think that's why I hate when people call me Pastor John, is because I would see people act one way when a pastor wasn't in the room. And then my dad would walk in and oh, Pastor Dan's here, right? And they would totally change their demeanor. They would change their language. They would change, the way that they presented themselves. And it would bug me so bad. I'm like, bro, just be real. And that's one thing that I really, how I lead now, is I just want people on my teams, myself, my community, just to be real with each other. Because if we're not being vulnerable and being honest with where we at and who we are, then we'll never actually grow to where we need to be.
Yeah, I think there's something that's so respectable whenever you see somebody who, not saying they just open up specifically to everyone.
Yeah,
but
red flag.
That'd be very dangerous.
Yes.
But that is comfortable to be who they are, and also confident to be who they are.
Absolutely.
No matter who's in the room. Whether it's a president, a pastor, a rabbi, or, I guess you're going to act a little bit differently if you're in the room with your wife compared to other people. Hopefully
Yes.
you're not just being completely different. Oh, my wife's here. I need to change how I'm acting.
Right. Yeah. And I think the biggest trigger for me was, and don't get me wrong, if a man of God walks in and I have a certain respect for him, I may not make a certain joke that I make to like you, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm like,
He says me not as a man of God.
no,
Apparently.
no,
Not
no, I do. But like, we're comfortable. We have history. We're family, literally. So I may change like some demeanors, but I'm not going to change who I am as Johnathan, right? I'm not going to be cussing 1 minute because that's not who I am, and the next minute be like, oh, Pastor Dan's here, so I can't.
Yeah, you're not
say
gonna
that.
like be sitting in the back and then see Pastor walk in, you jump up and grab a broom or something.
Exactly. Oh, I won't even go there. I won't, yeah, the amount of times
Shots fired.
that the amount of times that I've seen staff members, and I'm not calling anyone out that I can think of right now, but just church staff have been around for a long time.
You've been around over 100 different people on staff, so this doesn't go after anybody particularly.
Yes, no, but they won't serve at all. They love pointing the fingers, telling everyone else what to do until the senior pastor walks in, and then they're like, I don't know, like spraying themselves with water and making them look like they're sweating. They're like, oh, I've been just working away for the Lord. I'm like, bro, you were sitting down telling all of us what to do. And again, I think that has a lot to do with how I try to lead teams and disciple people. Is vulnerability and accountability is so important. Don't just tell me what I want to hear. Tell me, what's actually real.
Yeah, be what I wants to hear.
Yeah, that's a good point. Exactly. So.
Yeah, no, I kind of think about it like as we're talking about it, I see the role of a pastor. You almost can compare it to the secular realm. A lot of people want to completely divide them. But if you really looked at a church staff, it's basically like a large corporation's HR department.
Yeah.
Along with the fact that then you also have to know the Bible and you have to make time for it. Whereas if somebody has a secular job, they're like, oh, yeah, I read a little bit of the Bible so I could be a Christian per se, and then I go work my job. Whereas if you work in ministry, there's an expectation, one, for you to do the same level of work physically, and then also to be able to carry the spiritual side too. So many people are like, oh, working in ministry can be so much easier, where it's almost you're carrying the double weight.
Yeah, for sure. And that's definitely a real thing. That why I have to be intentional with my family is because the weight that you do carry you can bring it home, and then your family wears it, and then your family wants to run from church, right? And I don't ever want to do that to my girls,
Yeah, I know that can definitely be a catalyst. Yeah. That, you can either make it to where it's something that is seen as empowering and loving, or seen as something that you just want to run away from.
Yeah, absolutely.
I guess kind of jumping this isn't even on my list, but kind of jumping into a time wherever you felt like running from the church.
Yeah. And,
like if you can see any one thing that led to that, or if it was just a time of trying to find yourself.
That's just, man, again, you were just on fire with these certain questions. I heard this quote, must have been a couple years back, and I actually shared it with the staff yesterday at staff meeting. It says, erosion is a slow process. And I realized when I wanted to run away from ministry that it wasn't just one thing that set it off. Mm-hmm. It wasn't like 1 week I'm like, oh, I'm done with this crap. It was a matter of years of holding back forgiveness from certain people, holding grudges, if I knew it or not, and, doing crazy amounts of hours and, not getting a thank you. Obviously, we don't do ministry for a thank you, mm-hmm. But when you're in a culture of people that expect you to grind it out, and there's no community and culture to like love you through that, mm-hmm. That was really hard. So I think when I decided, this must have been a couple years back, I'm like, yeah, I want to be done with ministry, and I want to go work just with my hands. Mm-hmm. And I made that decision, ended up leaving ministry, and I couldn't get away from the call, though. It was just like in my heart, like, no, I have to, like, I'm called to pastor people. And I believe you can pastor people anywhere you're at. Don't get me wrong. It doesn't have to happen at a church. That a lot of people will think, hey, to be used in ministry, that means you have to be a staff member at a church. I think that idea is garbage. There's some people that are called to be staff members at a church, but there's some people that are called right now. You're cleaning windows, but at the same time, I believe that you are. I've worked with you. You're encouraging people, influencing people, empowering people, praying for people. Like, I've been in living rooms where you are literally laying your hands on people and praying for people, and it's like that is sometimes more ministry and more pastoring than some pastors and ministers do in church.
I mean, I think like we kind of just how we started out saying that like I guess religion itself it's not supposed to be a religion. Our relationship is supposed to be our lifestyle, how we walk.
Absolutely, yeah.
And I think that'll kind of segue pretty well into, say, the one Bible-based question that I think this has all kind of been Bible-related at this point.
Yeah.
But the one Bible-based question that was, specifically directed at the Bible was, what is faith? And that is such a broad question. It's that can be taken so deep. We could literally talk for hours on what is faith. But as like just a generality, what is your perspective, belief on what faith is? What you see faith as is.
Yeah. Oh man, should have studied before I. No.
I'm going to tell you, my studying for this was a 5-second search.
Yeah.
On something because it was just I want raw answers.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be like, the Bible says this in Luke 12:42. Just like, from your heart what you believe faith is and what its importance is.
Yeah. I believe that faith is the only way that we can have relationship with God the Father and Jesus and the Holy Spirit, because if I didn't have the faith to know that He's there even when I don't see Him, I would get discouraged real quick, man. There's been moments in my life, and not just my life, but me and my wife's, where we are just like, we thought we heard the voice of God, and then we started following that, and then it's like, I'm not sure, man, because we didn't see God like doing these amazing, miraculous things, and but faith is what got us through, knowing that we do know that we heard God, we felt God. I didn't audibly hear Him; that would be awesome, though. We felt God on the decision, and we pursued after that. And then when we got there, it was like, okay, God, are you still here? But we just go back and remember, no, we do know the voice of God. We know Him. And faith was the only thing that got us through the fact of those dry and quiet seasons, man. Yeah.
Okay, so my question, and this is completely a leading question.
Okay.
So in your mind, do you believe faith is a belief system or an action system?
Oh, man. I think it's a twofold. I think it's both. I think obviously with everything inside of me, I have to believe God is who He says He is. He does what He says He'll do, even if it's not how my brain thinks it should happen. There's a lot of people, I struggle with the name it and claim it Christianity.
Okay.
Because people want to say, I want to name and claim this and that and blah, blah, blah. In reality, the only thing we should be naming and claiming is the will of God. And sometimes the will of God is not what I think I should be naming and claiming, right? But also there's action behind faith. I mean, you got, what is it, James? I could be totally.
It's James 1.
Yeah, James. Yeah, talking about faith without works. Like, it's literally, I think the Message, it says it really cool. It talks about faith without works is like a hand without a glove. It just lays there completely useless. I think it's twofold. Like, I have to believe with everything inside of me. It's my belief system. But I also have to live it out. If I'm not living it, then it's just dead. That's exactly what I think.
Well, interestingly, I was actually read earlier the translation of James, but from a Hebrew Bible.
Yeah.
And it said, and this is where I'm kind of leading towards, is it said that faith has not to do with salvation, but with leading unto righteousness.
That's good. Yeah.
And the say the multifold, like you're saying, as far as being able to see multiple meanings behind it, is I think it kind of being the fact that we can see things from so many different languages. I like the Hebrew word for faith is emunah. And when you kind of just directly look at it, it means a steadfastness. But it actually, when you look at the deeper meaning, is it means a walking out the principles of God, walking out God's commandments.
That's good.
And I like to think about it under the fact of, like, so for us sitting here, a good picture for faith is sitting in a chair. We believe, I have faith, thankfully, that this chair can hold up my weight.
Yeah.
I had that same thought as I was sitting back there in the back, but it wasn't in practice until I came up here and sat down.
Yeah.
And the faith was in the action of sitting, because I could say I thought the chair would hold my weight, but it didn't mean anything until I came to do it.
Absolutely, yeah.
And in that regard, it being leading unto righteousness, because the righteousness of God coming through us walking out what he says.
Yeah. No, that's real good, man. You're talking about, it's actually funny because before you got here and we were setting everything up, I had to test the chair. I'm like, maybe I'm too fat for this chair. So I'm actually right there with you. That's good, man.
Yeah. So
That's
for me
super
personally, my thought process of faith is, I believe faith is in your actions.
Yeah.
I think, faith as a belief system, I think, is kind of meaningless because you have so many people, and I think, getting on into things in the future, like with problems that America has of being claimed as a per se Christian nation, say as a Bible-based nation, and most of the people who claim to be Bible-based have probably never even opened it, or if they have, it's been a year.
Yeah, too long.
And it all has to do with your actions. I like to think about the fact that, you go back in time, and to people, whenever you said, to what do you believe in, it wasn't like a, do you believe in God or do you not believe in God? It was, hey, obviously there's a God. What are you going to do about it?
Yeah, that's good. No, that's real good, man.
Yeah. So I think that being a good little thing, and we'll jump from faith. I kind of think it'd be fun to kind of go into some hot takes.
Yes,
and
hot takes are my favorite.
These ones being fun because if we have family that watches these, then it could just cause all sorts of debates, which makes it more fun.
Christmas will be interesting.
It's okay, I won't be there. No, I'm kidding. I'd get in a lot of trouble.
Yeah, you would.
So we'll start off kind of, say, secular, and then we'll move towards family and stuff. In your opinion, what do you think is the most difficult sport to go pro in? With the caveat of saying it not having to do with anything genetic. So not saying it's hard to become pro in the NBA because I'm not 7 foot tall.
Okay.
So skill-based.
So are you saying me personally or worldwide?
Worldwide, what is the hardest sport, in your opinion, to go pro as?
See, I've had this conversation, I'd say recently, like about 6 months ago with somebody. And I probably have to say baseball.
Okay.
And I'm only saying that because I've seen baseball players, a lot of times those dudes can ball almost anywhere they go. Mm-hmm. But then you take other ballers and put them on a baseball field to try to hit that little ball. And that is totally different, man. I can play sports, and I'm pretty decent. Obviously, I'm 5'7.5". I'll give myself that half an inch, and kind of overweight now. I used to be good and athletic. Something with baseball, man, it won't translate with a lot of people. So that's just my opinion, man.
I think that's a really, really good opinion because I think, for me, basketball is a lot about repetition.
Yeah.
And as far as going pro nowadays, it really does have a lot to do with genetics. I think football, American football, is very much the same. Mm-hmm. It's but mostly based on genetics. There's enough positions where if you're big enough and you're strong enough, they can say, here, I'll put you in this position where you don't even have to touch a ball.
Just push someone.
Yeah, just push somebody over. I would kind of wonder, my thought would be, and I guess it would be on your definition of sports, is into combat sports. So something along the
Oof.
lines of like a jujitsu or a boxing, because it goes past just the physical side of things, because there's a lot mentally in those that's like going to war.
That's a good point, man, because those dudes are like that. Well, they're geniuses, especially like even when they're wrestling and they have to figure out. Like I'm like, I'll see these guys wrestling or something like fighting, and I'm like, he's about to be choked out. It's game over, and then he somehow maneuvers his way because he was patient enough. And I'm like, that was not just impressive strength, but he used his mind. Like that was
Oh yeah, because
crazy.
you get into some and you're like, oh, these people, they get hit in the head, they're gonna be so dumb, and it's like, but then you sit them down and like they play a game of chess.
Yeah.
And they like destroy most people in chess because of the fact that everything they do is tactical.
Absolutely.
I need to keep this much distance between me and you. I need to make sure that if I'm going to do this, it could lead you to respond like this. And I need to either be ready to counter, or if you do something that's completely unexpected.
Yeah. So, man, that's good. I would hate to be a boxer or MMA fighter because I really think I would be awful at it. I'd just be like, hey, let's talk this through, man. But what about golf though? You played some golf. Like I mean, you're left-handed, so you're a little bit. I don't know if that has anything to do with anything.
I think one of the biggest things with that is everything is designed for a right-handed person.
Okay.
So the entryway can become so much more difficult.
Got you. Okay.
And I guess in that regard too, probably I guess money breaks all boundaries.
Yes.
But the access to things to be able to look at, to be able to follow. So like I guess like the coaching side learning it makes it being left-handed in that regard makes it having to focus a lot more and be able to kind of almost self-learn.
Yeah.
In that regard, golf, I would say golf is probably is a very difficult sport.
Yeah, man.
You look at people who've played forever, and at that rate, I think it almost could come down to like the genetics. I've heard before that, with enough, and in that rate, I guess it would depend on which sports, because saying that, you can basically get to be in the top 10% of any sport with pure determination. With a little bit of genetics, you can get to the top 95, but it takes the perfect marriage of the genetics with the hard work to become a 1%.
Wow.
Is you can become better than 90% of anybody by just putting work in, but that leap from getting from the 90 to like the 95 or the 99,
Yeah.
it's genetic.
Yeah. Yeah, because, I mean, it's true. Like, some people just have it. Like, I've seen dudes go out and we'll play pickup basketball somewhere. And I'm getting old now, so I don't do that much. But these dudes would come out, and they're obviously taller than me, which is not hard to do. Like, I mean, the average hobbit's taller than me.
Bilbo.
Yeah, Bilbo is taller than me. But these guys would come out, and they just had something that other people didn't. And they're just natural with it. They were smooth with it. I don't know, dude. And I just wished I was taller than 5'7".
Yeah.
I
think going back to how you're talking about golf, and I remember hearing about Tiger Woods was asked one time what he would do. Like, he was coaching people on how to hit a ball out of like this bunker spot. And he coached them, everybody figured it out and everything. And then right when he finished, he started laughing. And the golf coach that was there was like, why? And he said, like, oh, that's not what I would do personally at all.
Yeah.
And he explained what he would do. And for him, it works. It works out better than it does for anybody else. But it's not something else that anybody else can do.
Yeah, exactly. Some people just naturally have the instinct to I don't know, do it. Yeah.
I've always liked the thought of myself of having the instinct towards soccer. But I never applied it into such a point where it's like, I don't know, all these people who are pro, they'd probably look at like even my thought process towards the game and laugh.
Yeah.
Like, I think at that rate, my thought process towards the game is probably in that top 90 percentile.
Yeah.
But those other 10% of people are, whole different level.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Yeah, those soccer players, what is it averagely they run what? How many miles in a game are they running?
So from what my recollection is, I know a lot of at least midfielders run at least 10 kilometers in a game. And that's while being pushed around, dribbling a ball, cutting around the field, all this sort of stuff. And I think that equates out to like a little over 6 miles, between 6 and 7 miles.
That is outrageous. Like,
over a 90-minute period, no breaks, hard cuts, all this sort of stuff. Yeah, I think I would see that as being pretty difficult.
100%. Yeah, I would be dead halfway through it. Just drop over dead.
Okay. Now I've got one last of the, I guess, a dilemma question. There's another ones that I have, but I don't think they would fit as well.
Okay.
But the dilemma question, putting in order, your mother, your wife, your child.
Yeah. Like, wait, putting in order, like, what's happening? Like, are we being robbed? Like,
level of importance.
Okay. Oh man, I mean, that's tricky.
And this is where it's so different for so many people online.
I love my mom, but my mom has to go third, and she understands that. And then my daughter's going to go second, okay? And I'll explain that this is tricky because, let's be real, she's the cutest thing, in my opinion.
She probably is the cutest thing in the world.
So, and then my wife, obviously, number one, because I made a commitment to my wife for the rest of my life. And I'm not saying, well, I'm with her because I made a commitment. That's not why. Like, I love her. She's like, and Ivy, in 18 years, will be who knows what, and starting her own life.
Yeah.
Right? And so, obviously, I want to pour as much as I can into those 18 years. But after that, she's going to be an adult, make her decisions. I'll still be the dad that, I can be and should be for her. But, yeah, Savannah, Ivy, and my beautiful mother that, I'm sorry.
See, and that's the funny part, because what I remember seeing online,
Yeah.
because I saw a lot of people answer this question, my answer is the exact same as yours.
Okay, yeah.
Nobody else answered in that manner that answered it.
Really?
Most people, their mother was top or their
What?
child. The wife was never top.
That is
For
crazy.
me, I think is so backwards.
Yeah.
And everybody's like, it's my mom. She gave birth to me. It's like, okay, she's hitting the bottom of this ranking, but then you rank it across Texas and she's in like the top 5 of everybody. It's like, okay, it's because of the pool of people you're weighing it against.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, she's third in this grouping, but she's in the top 0.0001% whenever you actually take things as a whole.
Yeah, absolutely.
And in my regard, so kind of going off of what you're saying, you made a commitment to your
Absolutely.
wife that puts her at top. Your child is the fruit of that commitment.
Yeah.
So that was like, they are the creation based off of the fact of that relationship with the top. So there shouldn't be a trump in that regard.
Yeah.
I also think in my regard, my thought process is, as a father, my regard is to my wife.
Yeah.
I am the protector of my wife. And in that regard, the wife is then the protector of the children.
Yeah.
If I take care of my wife to the best of my ability, I do everything I can for my wife because I know she's going to sacrifice her everything for our children. But if I put her on a lower pedestal, then she doesn't have as much ability to pour herself out for them like she would if she wasn't my top.
Yeah. No, man, that's super good, and that's a good perspective. I saw this thing, and it said one of the biggest red flags that you should see in a guy, talking about if you're going to get married, is if he's a mama's boy to a point that looks unhealthy, because that means eventually, and I guess I didn't think of this, the list that you're saying, that he'll put his mom and his mom's needs above you as the wife. I'm like, why would anyone do that? But then, like you said, that's crazy to my brain.
Yeah, and in that regard too, like, to me, my mom is very important.
Absolutely. Yeah.
But my family and my household comes first.
Absolutely.
And in that regards, when it comes down to other stuff, like going through the generations, like, I need to care for my generation to set up the next generation well. The next generation is the most important, but just because it's the most important doesn't mean that my focus on it makes it better.
Yeah.
So my focus on the one who, because, as a man, I can say, I'm not the most caring, nurturing person. But if I love the one who is caring and nurturing, then she can do a better job taking care of our boys.
Yeah, that's a good point, man.
My authority laying down to my boys, with my wife being able to be the one who balances and shows the love, I think makes a big difference.
Yeah.
And I wouldn't want to say like I know all the answers to it, but I also can look at the fact that I think my boys are pretty amazing.
Absolutely, they are.
I like to just, put them above any other children in the world.
Yeah.
I see some genius children. I'm like, oh man, my boys aren't as smart as them. But then I can look at other people like, my boys are smarter than them.
That's great. That's awesome.
But putting them in a place where it's for their best benefit, and I think their best benefit is being secondary to my wife.
Yeah.
In that regards too, my mom being from the generation beforehand, so many people want to throw away the importance of the generation that's gone before us.
Yep.
But we wouldn't be here if it wasn't for them.
Absolutely.
I think there's such a balancing act in the previous generation and moving forward. And there's got to be a respect, but then there's also kind of like a catapulting effect.
Yeah.
That if you cling to if you fully cling to the generation before, then there's almost a drop off in the next generation.
Yeah.
And I think that's where you can see a lot of problems with some churches, because some churches, they look to the older generation and they say they're the ones with the money. I'm going to cater to the ones with the money, and it drives the youth away, and it kills the community as a whole because you're not putting an importance on the next generation. Whereas per se, if we said like the middle generation, if you put your focus in that middle generation, they're the ones who are parenting the generation that's coming up. They're also the ones who have the ability to take care of the generation that's gone before them, where there just needs to be a balance.
Yeah, and that's the perfect word for it, is balance. And honestly, I don't know if I've ever seen the perfect balance in a church body that I've been in. And that's not a shot anywhere.
It just proves that the church isn't perfect like everybody wants to pretend it is.
Exactly. Exactly.
It's like people are involved or something.
Yes, wow. People complicate things, don't they?
Would the church be so nice and so clean if people weren't involved?
Yes, that's sad because it's funny because I'm about to have worship practice here in a minute, and we cleaned this whole place, and I started thinking, there's going to be footprints everywhere.
Footprints?
But that's people, man. It's good.
It's kind of like, what does the scripture say? Something along the lines of like, a clean stall is proof that there's nothing in it to be working.
It's empty.
There's no ox. Means no work's getting done. There's no flour being ground. If there's no crap around, it means that life's life's not there.
Yes. Yeah, and honestly, and that's a really good thought too. Like if you're called to ministry, but also parenthood, to marriage, there will be crap sometimes that we got to clean up, but it's okay. you know?
It makes the situation dirty.
Yep.
It can be a smelly situation. Could throw out the cliche. It's a crappy situation.
It's a crappy situation.
But it's just what happens.
Absolutely.
It's what happens in life. It happens in business. It happens in family. And what do you know? It happens in church.
It does, man. It does. Yeah, and all these people that will try to pretend like crap doesn't happen is full of crap.
I think like we were talking even earlier, like the transparency of having people that you can go to and be like, hey, life is pretty garbage right now, and I need help working through it. Yeah. Where so many people, they want to say, hey, I'm doing great, I'm perfect, and then behind them is like a firestorm.
Yeah.
Whereas obviously you shouldn't go air out your problems to anybody. I know for me personally, there have been a lot of times where we've been in times of struggle, and I won't tell hardly anyone because I know that there's some people who can't carry the weight of what I carry.
That's true. That's just wisdom right there, yeah.
And if I sit there and I tell my problems to people who can't carry my level of problems, then it just becomes, one, can be gossip.
Yeah.
Two, I believe in the power of words in the air.
Absolutely.
And if people are going to be putting out negative words and they can't carry things the way I would carry them, I'm not going to tell them. There have been problems we've had where I know even my wife can't handle the stress of a situation where it's like, this is my problem and I will carry it. I will deal with it. Yeah. If I need advice, I will go find somebody who I know can deal with this level of a problem.
Absolutely. Yeah, and that's just good. That's good advice right there, because having the person to go to and knowing who not to open your mouth to is so important. The amount of times that I've gotten in trouble and the situation has gotten worse because I talked to the wrong person.
Yeah.
Oh man, and I'm like, I wish I could go back in time and just shut up, John. Oh
Well,
my.
it's like I know there have been times where, like, it could be a test towards me, or even like you said, it around the wrong person. I've had times where people have sat there and around me and said like a credit card number or a social security number. And I'm like, hey, yeah, now I know your social security. And they're like, hey, it's between you and God on if you go and do something with it. It's like, well, yeah, it kind of is, isn't it?
Yeah.
And it's like there being the trust factor of like, being around me to say something like that. Where if they had said that around somebody in Walmart, that would have been really dangerous.
Yeah, especially Walmart, buddy.
You never know. I mean, it would have been even worse if it was like somebody from Target, right?
Yeah, that's hysterical.
Well, man, do you have any thoughts?
Man, I guess I don't know how exactly we're ending this, but I guess the question that I really had for you is going back to almost the beginning of what some things we were talking about, but you balance so much, and you have a rich history in your life and a lot of wisdom. And how old are you right now?
Not quite 30.
Okay, exactly. And you've gone through more life than a lot of people, which in my opinion means you carry a lot of wisdom that people don't carry. So getting to my question,
Okay.
You're a husband and a father, you're a business owner, you're a student.
Mm-hmm.
How are you balancing all of those things, and what is the priority when it comes to these things?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think I don't see it necessarily as a balance.
Okay.
I see everything as overlapping.
Yeah.
In that regard, it makes it to where whenever one of them needs time, it can get put in.
That's good.
Because
Yeah.
it's not like I don't have my life so segmented out that if I need to send a business text in the middle, like in late evening, then it throws stuff off. Is
Yeah.
it makes it to where it ebbs and flows. Being a student, I think the fact of saying being a student, I want to be claiming being a student for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I want to always be in a perspective where I want to be learning.
That's good.
Because if I'm not learning, then I'm dying.
Yeah.
So I needs to be moving forward in some things. If it's with my relationship with God, if it's how I see God having me relate in a business sense, if it's being a father, if it's being a husband, if it's being a friend or a brother. I know for me personally, like one thing that I can say some people would see as, not necessarily a good thing, but helps me with where I'm at with a lot of that stuff is my group of people who I would confide in or go to. My, like, I guess you'd say friend group is a very, very small number.
Yeah.
Like if I had missing fingers, I could still count it on my hand.
That's great.
Um,
Yeah, that's so good.
And because of that, I take ownership of everything I have.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not on anybody else to carry what I have to carry.
Yeah.
I personally believe that, I'm going to be very successful in life. That's just what my mindset is.
Yeah.
And I know that it's not for anybody else to make that happen but me.
That's good.
So for me, if it's less sleep, it's whatever it takes.
Yeah.
There are times, we talked about, like, sometimes I struggle with it, but if I try to get up at 4:00 in the morning so that I can study, so that I can work out, so that I can just gather my thoughts for the day.
Yeah.
I remember listening to somebody saying, and I think it's kind of a funny thought because they're not even a very religious person, but they said they believe God wakes up at 4 a.m. And their reason for saying that is they think that the only way you can really either hear God or for them saying, gather your own thoughts for the day is if you wake up at such a point in time where you're not hearing everybody else. You're not hearing the hustle and bustle of the day, and you're able to hear your own thoughts,
That's
and
good.
for a secular thought of process, they're like, is just hearing their own thoughts instead of over other people.
Yeah.
Whereas say from a biblical perspective, it's hearing that still small voice.
Absolutely.
It's hearing the voice of God and believing, like, so in my thought process, believing that God's in every single one of us. He's always speaking to us. It's whether or not we're listening.
Yeah.
So getting up that early so that I can hear what it is I need to do for the day.
No, that's super good. And I like how you said it's more of a layered thing, that if you do have to take a text, it doesn't throw off everything. And I've been to a point where I've been so unhealthy with certain things in life and burn out certain areas, too much here, too less there, to where if I do get that text or that call and it does throw everything off, and it's like, it shouldn't be like that. So that layering, that's a really good point
I
of view.
think too, I think cutting out a lot of distractions. I think there wouldn't be a way to do it if there was a lot of distractions in life. Like, I watch less TV now than I ever have before.
Yeah.
I play less video games than I did a while back. Like, and for me, I won't play a video game unless it's to connect with someone
Absolutely,
and connect with family. For me, I won't just sit down and play a game to play by myself, because that's not, I don't personally see any benefit in it.
Yeah.
For me, it's not like I need a time to unwind. I guess in all reality, like getting really deep into things, I see my time here on earth is limited, and I know I'm trying to get to the point, I guess rather, where every moment of my life leaves an impact instead of there being so many stalled out moments in life. Like, if I sacrifice the rest of my life to put my children into a place where they can make a massive impact on the world, and say, make our name known, like, I see it as worth sacrificing my life for.
Absolutely.
You know, I was thinking about it talking with Andrea the other day, and I'm almost to the age where I lost, to be the age that my father was when I lost him.
Yeah.
And I personally think about the impact that my dad's had on me. Like, I think about my dad every single day.
Yeah.
And I want to make his name great. And I've almost been on earth the same amount of time that he was. And thinking about, like, has my impact to this point been to the level that his impact was on me?
Yeah.
Because of what he instilled in me, and just me wanting to carry the name well, makes it to where I want to be successful so that his name is known.
Yeah.
And in that regard, I want to set my children up to be successful so that they can make my name known.
Yeah, that's good, man.
It's a legacy for me.
It is, man. That's good. And that's what our life should be, is a generational thought process. Is it's not just for me to hold on to, but who can I empower to go further than me? That's good.
Yeah, I think I put a quote on online the other day, basically saying that, you know, a life lived for comfort is meaningless. We're not supposed to be comfortable. We're supposed to grow.
Yeah.
Growth takes pressure.
It takes
You
pressure.
You don't grow without pressure and, like, putting yourself through hard times.
That's so true, man. Yeah, and I can go back and I look at my life and I see, like, the moments where I grew the most, where I became mature in certain areas, was when I was the most uncomfortable and I was like, this sucks. But in reality, I was growing, and there was things inside of me that needed to mature, and that pressure got me there, you know?
Yeah, I think I have one last thing, I guess, just to throw there, and maybe it can be our ending point, because I think it goes really well with where we're at. And it was the Latin root word for decision means to cut off.
Wow. Yeah.
And I think that can go in so many directions, and it's like, to me, I think it's almost freeing, because some people, they're like, well, if I make this decision, then it's going to cause an issue over here. And in that regard, if making a decision, it means cutting something else off in life.
Yeah, that's good.
So for me, making the decision for my life to be about legacy means I'm going to cut off some of the comforts in life. Does that mean life's not going to be enjoyable? No.
Yeah,
like, I'm going to enjoy the process. There's going to be stuff along the lines, you know, if there's really cool stuff that happens along the lines to be able to continue that hunger and continue that drive, then that's amazing.
Yeah.
But it's not about getting to those points. If they are stepping stones to the long game, then that's amazing.
Absolutely, yeah.
But if they never happen, it's okay.
Yeah. Man, that's good. Yeah.
Man. Well, I think we're good. We will call it an end to
Yes.
episode 1 of the Culture Change podcast. We talked nothing
Absolutely.
about culture. We maybe talked about change, and
Yes.
we'll get into this as we go through the next segments of life.
Yeah.
Thank you guys so much
Yeah.
for joining us.
Absolutely. See y'all.
Bye.